Andy Austin here with the next chapter from The Rainbow Machine, Tales from a Neurolinguist's Journal by Andrew T. Austin. And you can buy this on Amazon, all good online sellers, and also leave a review, which would be amazing. This chapter is entitled Voodoo Science, and is where I tell the story of a gentleman who was cursed. And he had been cursed by an ex-partner, and essentially this was causing him a few problems. Now, he came to see me mostly because he both knew me as... he knew I was a therapist, but also he knew my interest in the weird, the wonderful, the arcane, the occult, the alchemical, and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that has really been a lifelong interest of mine anyway, and something that I have been involved with for a lot of years. When he came to see me, he basically had said that I think it was his ex-wife or ex-partner, had cursed him. She was a witch. And because she was a witch, she had these powers and had used these powers negativistically, if there is such a word, on him. And it was causing him no end of problems, both health and spiritually and mentally and every possible way. Now, realistically... is that likely to be true? Is it realistic that because his ex-wife was a witch? Now, people use witch in a number of ways. I mean, the old witch could refer to just a horrible person, or somebody who identifies themselves with the various cults that exist that call themselves witches. Is it likely that she has this power to be able to create action at a distance? I don't think so. I've been in the magic and occult scene for a lot of years, and let's just say most people you meet in that scene, they can't even tie their own shoelaces, let alone cause action at a distance by casting some kind of spell. But because humans being as they are, and all of the stories and mythologies that we have within our various cultures, when people identify as being a witch or some kind of satanic figure, some kind of black witch, there's a fear. There is very much a fear that possibly they have a power. Well, if you meet most of these people, trust me, they haven't got any powers whatsoever. I think that would be reasonable to say. And if you mix within those magical, mystical circles, the people who have, basically, the ones who aren't the Nutter Brigade, are usually little more than philosophers, and that's largely how I view these things. They're a practical and applied philosophy rather than the supernatural cavorting with spirits and demons and sending entities after people because I can command the forces of the universe. Yeah, right. Just look at, again, picking on the NLPers, I'm sorry, but look at a lot of the NLPers. They seem to believe because they speak it, it will be true. Because I say it, it will happen. Because speech commands the universe. Yeah, you may want to look at the original archetypes of that as to the biblical and various other things within Judaism and Kabbalah, where that is a very much a strong archetypal motif, but I don't believe it to be anything more than a mythology and a philosophy, and certainly not something that I see being enacted by various self-appointed mystics, prophets, and trainers of alphabet therapies. However, the point I want to make with this particular chapter is, did this man really believe that he was cursed? Did he really believe that his ex-partner was a witch and had power to do something to him? Probably not. Just like when I meet people who have quite strong delusions within psychosis or schizophrenia, do they really believe the things that they say? I don't think so. A lot of people, QAnon is a thing at the moment that's going around. A lot of the Nutter Brigade are getting caught up in these kind of conspiracy things. And look online as well for all the ongoing conspiracies. There's always a new conspiracy coming along once one gets a little bit dull and boring. Do they actually believe it? Now, some possibly do. But I have a suspicion that it's not that this man believed his wife to have occult powers. I don't think the deluded schizophrenic patients actually believe the things they're talking about, but they fear it might be true. And that's a whole different thing. Often what gets interpreted as being a belief is actually a concern that something might be. It's a fear, and then all the you know what happens when you get afraid of something? When we're afraid of stuff, we can start to develop a story inside our head, and it becomes quite embroiled and quite imaginative, the energy and the creativity we can put into our darkest fears. But do we believe it? I don't think so. Some people don't necessarily believe in God. They fear there might be a God. Some people don't believe in God, some people do believe in God, but they fear there might not be one. So what we have to do in working with anyone who has what appears to be a delusion is this actually what it appears to be as a psychotic delusion, and which is really little more than a strong belief, or is it actually just a fear that they have, that they're projecting out? But the problem comes down to how clinicians and practitioners of alphabet therapies then discuss the issue with their client, because they reduce everything down to beliefs, and because they can ask for lots and lots more details from the patient, from the client, to find out more about this alleged belief, but actually all they're doing is finding out more about that person's fears. Now, this is why when we work with beliefs and we work with delusions, doing any form of reality orientation, doing any form of corrective intervention to say, no, this version of reality isn't correct, it's actually this one, it doesn't work. And I've seen this both in the neurosurgical department, where we have people in a delirium state post-surgery, or they're waking up from coma states, or various other things, where what they're expressing, what they're frightened of, what they're saying, actually is not psychological. It's the result of the state that they're in following surgery and huge sleep deprivation as well, because of the ongoing observations that the nursing staff perform. So there's lots of reasons why there's organic changes happening in the brain. It doesn't help to do reality orientation on those individuals. It's much better to work with it as though it's true, which gives a pattern of confirmation to the person. And when you say something that you're afraid of and everyone else dismisses it, not only is your fear not being addressed, but you as an individual are being invalidated. So when you're validated with your experience, there's a degree of certainty. So there's a degree of reassurance that then happens. Once we've validated the individual, we can then work with whatever the belief is that they have, or whatever the fear is they have, whatever it is that we're being presented with. But simple reality orientation simply doesn't work. Which is why, with this particular individual, my approach was not to take a psychological approach. I met him at his model of the world. I pulled off where I lived back then. I mean, at that time, I lived in a bedsit. Just to give you my little back sob story, I used to live in a house. I think there would have been 9 people in that house in total, all with individual. It was a large house that we converted the bedrooms into individual bedsits. So I had a tiny room with a tiny, tiny kitchen, and that was it. There was a toilet and a dribble shower that was shared between everybody. There was no running hot water, and there was no central heating. And that's where I lived at the time. That's where I used to see clients too. It was absolutely horrendous, to be honest. A bit embarrassing to look back that people were paying to come and see me, but it was all I could afford. In my little room, all the walls were all my books. I had hundreds and hundreds of books, hundreds of them, literally. And I pulled off on that one of the magic books. I think it was the Greater Key of Solomon. And then go to the relevant chapter that's suitable for him, and we design the sigil and all the rest. I send him away as I then construct what I'm going to do. I've got a buy-in from him because I'm taking him seriously. I'm taking him seriously, and I'm also taking his belief, delusion, fear seriously, rather than trying to reframe it, outframe it, dismiss it, and say, so what's really the problem here? What are you really worried about? Then he comes back, and then I give him the occult ritual for him to perform. Now think about what happens in that process. That I'm taking his fears, I'm taking his concerns, his alleged beliefs, more seriously than he is. I suspect there's a little part of him that's going, I'm not entirely sure this is actually true, and I might be, he's actually taking it more serious than I am. I think there's a little internal dialogue that's going to suggest to him that maybe he's gone too far. As a little side note, I remember one time I was asked, because I used to do a lot of agency nursing, I was asked, can I go up onto the endoscopy unit? One of the nurses phoned in sick. Would I be interested in going up there for the day? I thought, yeah, easy money. Because I know in an endoscopy, the doctor pretty much does all the job. And they just have to have a nurse there to be there. And that was pretty much all I did all day. We had a fella come in who had a colonoscopy. It was a little bit uncomfortable for the guy, and he didn't really have the best time of it. He chose to not have the sedation. So they're stuffing the camera up where no camera should ever be stuffed. And he's squirming around quite a bit, not having a very nice time. The docs do the thing, they pull it all back out again, and so actually that all looks fine. So there's nothing to be concerned about there. There's no overt pathology. We'll send the biopsies off routinely, but I think you're fine. And the guy, it's like he had a revelation. He said, yeah, I did think everything would be fine. It's just that my wife has been feeding me too much fruit recently. And it was almost like for him to wake up to something within his relationship, he had to have a camera shoved up somewhere in order for him to have that realization. And sometimes I could relate to that. The doctor was aghast, he said to me, "What a waste of a medical procedure that was." And I was like, "Well, yeah, from a rectal health point of view, but not necessarily from his mental health point of view. He had to have that happen in order for him to make a realization." When I'm treating this guy seriously, and I'm developing this occult intervention very seriously, and for real, because I'm taking off the grimoires from the shelves and working this stuff out, and then going through it with him, he will start to have revelations at that point before he's even done the ritual, the thing that's going to give him the protection. Now, for anyone out there who thinks they have been cursed and hexed and all the rest of it, all you got to do is just going to have a look at who are these people. Go and join some of these groups, these lodges. Have a look on Instagram, Wicker, Wicca. Wicker, there's two main branches, and there's all sorts of other things. It's the Instagram Wicker girls, hilarious. It's largely little more than a fashion trend, and a sense of community and identity, and something that basically gives someone a thing that's theirs in the individuation that a lot of teenagers will have. Wicker is one of those scopes that people go down. Some people go into extreme left-wing ideologies and political stuff. Some people go in right-wing and all sorts of things. So largely it is a fashion trend that fulfills an awful lot of function within the social paradigm that young people look for. The general older Wicker groups, I flirted with those briefly when I was younger, and I might save that for another video because it's all a bit awkward and all a little bit embarrassing, and let's just say I don't give them much power, and nor should you. It's just madness, a lot of it. Anyway, that's all for this one. Next chapter will be coming up early next week.